Hi everyone, this is Alyssa, your online editor and producer of the Signal PopCast. I'm here with other members of the staff today, including...
I'm Brandon Pena, editor-in-chief of the Signal.
Arturo, Guerra, the audience engagement editor.
Miles Shellshear, managing editor.
Jessica Kuzant, full of Reese's mouth.
Okay, moving on. Today we're going to be talking about the Disney Plus accounts being compromised upon launch and how they're tackling the problematic films and scenes of its past. Then we're going to do another round of Shout It Out, which is shouting out interesting things we're watching, listening to, reading, etc. that we think everybody else should be as well. First, Disney Plus. So within 24 hours of Disney Plus's launch on November 12th, it was reported that thousands of accounts were compromised, with many accounts for sale online, and some of these ranged from $3 to $7 for the login info. This not only led to problems with the platform, but also with connected platforms and accounts such as Hulu, ESPN, and Disney Vacation Club. Whenever the compromise was found and reported on, Disney told the press, "We have found no evidence of a security breach. We continuously audit our security systems, and when we find an attempted suspicious login, we proactively lock the associated user account and direct the user to select a new password." So that's a lot. My question to you guys is, well, first, do you know of anybody that has had this issue?
Not that I know of.
I haven't heard anything about it until now.
Do you have Disney Plus?
I do have Disney Plus.
Well, here's a warning to change your password. Some of the accounts where people were straight up locked out of. Some of the accounts, they would just see another user. Somebody here, I feel like here the other day, said that when they turned on, if it wasn't Disney Plus, it was another account of a streaming service, and the subtitles were in another language, and that there was a login, so they respectfully logged in, watched what they wanted, and didn't change the password. So what it looks like to have your account compromised is a lot of things. It's not just canceling credit cards and stuff. I was reading that the number was about 4,000 known out of 10 million, which is not bad, but if you're one of those 4,000, that's bad.
That explains why I hadn't really, I hadn't heard anybody that had experienced this when I read about it, so I was particularly kind of taken aback by it, but I still don't know a single person who was actually impacted by it, and I know I haven't been. Change my password just in case, though.
Yeah.
You can never be too safe.
Some of these, like, since Disney on their end said that they didn't have any breach on their end, which is, if it's true, technically could be correct. It could be through other means. There's been all these hacks with, like, the Marriott and everything else, so some of these could have come from other sources, and then they're applying this user data to Disney Plus, since 10 million people signed up, or there was 10 million people on the first day. You know how many people did not get the chance to log in that first day, or like the streaming service was overloaded. So whether or not it was a fail of Disney security, it still affects, like, the Vacation Club. I don't know if y'all read, some people went to go check in, and their reservation was gone. Like, there was issues with the reservation.
Oh, dang.
They're traveling from wherever because all the stuff is linked together.
Wow.
It's not just can't watch Mickey Mouse. It's like, oh, we just drove or took a plane to this location.
I mean, if that happened to me, I would want more of a better statement than Disney gave. I'd be like, why did my vacation just get canceled? And you're just saying, well, we didn't find anything on it. Well, I don't care if you found anything on your end. What are you going to do to fix the situation?
Yeah.
So.
I imagine those people had, like, confirmations and stuff, though. Like, if you booked a whole vacation. Unless it appeared to the people at Disney that they had canceled their trip versus their reservation just being gone.
Yeah.
It's a myriad of things.
Okay.
It wasn't just like X amount of people saying it was canceled.
Yeah.
It was different issues at different
Everybody
levels.
experienced, like, different levels of stuff. Kind of like the Disney Plus. Yeah.
do y'all know or have any suggestions for those Disney executives listening to this podcast? What?
There's so many.
Yeah. One of you 16 people can make this change. What can Disney do to lower the chances of another breach? Well, they're not calling it a breach. An issue like this in the future.
I mean, I feel with the amount of money and how big they've gotten that they would be able to afford like white hat hackers and be able to like, okay, let's test the security.
Yeah.
How, I don't know, how advanced do we need to make it? How far do we need to go for as big our systems are to cover that?
And see, like, I would want to know, I don't have Disney Plus, so I don't know, but if my account was, like, logged into some other device or whatever, like, I know happens on, like, Netflix, when I log into another device, I'll get an email saying, like, well, you've logged in here. Did you do this or did you not? So if Disney's not sending that out, which I don't know if they are or not, but if they're not, then they might consider doing that, because then it's like, well, clearly I did not log in from, like, Russia.
Hong Kong or
Yeah. So
Something that I find fascinating about this is that it's kind of something that happens with like every launch ever. It doesn't matter if you're launching like a video game. It doesn't matter if you're launching a website or a new streaming platform like Disney Plus. I remember Hulu when it kind of rebranded itself as like a television streaming platform instead of like a clip streaming platform. They had a lot of issues, and Netflix as well when they started to really get into the streaming game. No one has ever had a perfect launch, so it's kind of like funny to me almost that people are always like, they have these really high expectations for these huge companies. Like, yes, Disney probably had white hat hackers try and infiltrate their platform, but it really just takes the volume of people once it's accessible to everybody on the internet. It just takes that volume of people to be able to find those kind of vulnerabilities sometimes, which is unfortunate. Honestly, if only 4,000, 5,000, or even 10,000 people out of 10 million were impacted, Disney probably did a pretty good job of doing everything they could up until that point, I think.
One thing I've seen that I feel like is kind of valid criticism, especially with the resources they have, is not having two-factor authentication as an option. Because if that were an option, just like with the email, it's to log in, you have to get a text and put in a number, which is annoying. Some people don't use that, but that would have prevented a certain amount.
yeah.
Hopefully one of those 4,000. I don't know if that information was already compromised because their email, because of a different breach, because stuff is getting tested all the time. But as to what Miles said, that is pretty successful. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if lots of people consider that a win within the security services side of like their streaming platforms, plural now. Even if your account wasn't hacked, many are looking to revisit older films on the Disney Plus platform, like Dumbo, The Aristocats, or The Jungle Book, and have found a disclaimer reading, quote, "This program is presented as originally created. It may contain outdated cultural depictions." There's been a long discussion about Disney's approach to either sweeping problematic stuff under the rug, like let's not talk about it, you can't access it, or doing something about it, and usually more people lean on that side. Now, then you have to say, how are you going to do it? And this is obviously one way that they've approached it recently. What are y'all's thoughts on this warning?
I feel like the warning is good because it gives you forewarning to know, okay, if I don't want to watch this particular film because it has these, problematic situations in it or whatever, then I won't watch it. But I don't think, taking it off altogether is going to solve the issue, because, I mean, if I want to watch The Aristocats, which, by the way, I love The Aristocats, so I'm not going to not watch it because you tell me that,
It's just that one scene where I'm like, didn't hear that, go on. Everybody wants to be a cat.
Yeah, so it's like, I think that it's honestly probably the best solution they could do to not piss off a lot of people. Because if you take it off, then it's going to be like, well, how are you going to have Disney Plus? Because you have to go through the entire catalog and just take out so many things. Yeah. And it's like, well, I just wasted my money because I wanted to see the Aristocats and I can't even watch it. So, I don't know. I think,
That kind of goes with another question I had, is what threshold does a film need to hit to require this warning? Because the films that I listed earlier have that. Because I don't think there's an argument to be made, but there's arguments to be made for movies that were made in the 90s that maybe they weren't depicted as terrible. I'm thinking specifically Native Americans. They didn't do Peter Pan level of offensiveness, but there's definitely problems with that movie as a whole. And there was no warning on that. So it's
and
like...
even like shows. Like I saw on Twitter the other day, someone had posted about a scene from like Lizzie McGuire. And they were like, this is really problematic. And it's like, you don't think about it in those terms when you think of as a whole Lizzie McGuire. Like that's everybody.
You think wholesome.
Yeah. And so whenever you see those things, it's like, okay, well then maybe in that instance you can put at the beginning of the show this disclaimer. So you don't have to watch it. But I also feel like Disney is not blatantly out here trying to be racist or homophobic and stuff.
Not anymore, at least.
Yeah, not anymore, at least. So I don't know.
I mean, I could definitely see it being maybe not needed, but help give context to those older films. I mean, if media in general is just like a reflection of the times, like the newspapers are the first drafts of history, the media that's created during those times, like, is what people were experiencing. That's what regular life was, I guess, to them at that time. So with the context of, you might see some problematic scenes, I think it's definitely a good step. But maybe if they gave a little more context as to like, oh, it should depict this, this, and this, or
are you talking about like with the MPAA where it's like the rating system? They tell you what?
Okay. That might be good. Like this has racial slurs or examples of different.
I think it's more than a lot of other, media conglomerates would probably be willing to do. I think that the acknowledgement is worth something, but I don't know how much. It's not my position, to be honest with you. But I think it's a good thing. I don't see it as bad. I'm sure there are plenty of people that are outraged by it, but I don't understand that either.
Whatever is done, somebody's gonna be mad. It's just like, I don't think it should necessarily even be like what will make the least amount of people mad. It's like, what is the right thing so that when we're looking back 50 years again, did we take the right step?
Yeah. Because then it's like, what else can you expect them to do besides A, taking it off completely, or B, editing those scenes out? But then if you edit those scenes out,
they did in some.
Yeah, so in that instance, it's like, okay, was it necessary to do that? Or are we just trying to like cover up something that it's bad, and let's talk about why it is bad. Let's have this conversation. Let's not just take it out because it's bad without giving an explanation for people to talk about. Okay, well, this is why it is bad. This is why it shouldn't be in here. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I have a lot of mixed feelings. Also, they didn't just do one thing. Depending on the movie, they did different things. So, like I said, some newer things, it was no warning at all. It's just there. Some things, they had the warning in front, which I feel like the warning should have been a little bit more explicit. I didn't think about like it being different for everyone. I was thinking of like a template, but it doesn't have to be a template. They have the resources where it's usually the same 3 problems. Just change the text around.
Yeah.
And then some things had, like, I think Fantasia was the only one I could think of that had that scene taken out. And then Aladdin had the lyrics changed, but that's been changed for decades.
Yeah, those
now.
are like years ago.
And then the only movie that I've heard they're just not going to put on there is Song of the South. But they did, and I don't think that they should have done this, but it makes it more complicated when they treat each movie differently, which is good, but it's also, well, maybe we should have some more in this category as warnings, or maybe there's some that should have some sort of accompaniment other than text, because like saying may contain culturally outdated depictions, like, are you taking responsibility for it or you're not? Like, I know you taking responsibility, you're not the person who did it, but are you as a company doing it? Yeah. I saw that in like at least 2014, if not earlier. Warner Brothers was already doing it, and they had like a wall of text, or like, just so you know, they used the word Is this the one that has the image? No, it doesn't. They use the word ethnic and racial prejudices. They spelt out exactly. I think it was with Tom and Jerry, but there's some other ones that have had similar problems, like Bugs Bunny and stuff. And they said some of these things that y'all are saying. While the following does not represent the Warner Brothers view of today's society, some of these cartoons are being presented as they were originally created, because to do otherwise would be the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. So it's taking that extra step, like, why are we doing this? The who, what, where,
and see,
why.
like that statement to me, if I'm just like a casual viewer watching this, it would make more sense, because you're telling me that A, you do recognize that there are issues with this film, but B, you're not pretending like they didn't exist altogether, because they do, and we should be having this conversation like why it is problematic. But by just saying, well, it's problematic and
I'm
let's deal with
curious
it.
to know if any of the content, and I feel like it does, because I feel like I remember watching something on Disney Plus at some point, like, you know, in the last couple weeks, that had some sort of warning about, like, violence or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. But I'm curious to know if that is true, or if I'm recalling correctly, if the wording is the same, like if it says, if it's different, like if it says this film contains violence versus the wording that comes up where this may contain, like, culturally, I don't know exactly how they word it in the classic or the original films, but
I haven't seen violence come up, because I usually see it with the rating system. Like, it'll say why it's PG-13, smoking, suggested sexual content, violence, but I haven't seen it in any other.
I want to go back and look now, because I feel like I watched something. It might have been Star Wars or something, like episode 4 or something like that I watched, that it had some sort of warning at the beginning, but I'm not sure. I have to go back and look again.
And another credit, despite maybe not doing it, maybe trying to pull it like how Pepsi did with their commercial a few years ago. We acknowledge everybody may have feelings. Like, yeah, but what are those feelings? And then everybody's mad. I feel like that statement kind of did a Pepsi route when they have the authority to say something specific. But to that same end, Aristocrats was on Netflix. Netflix did not do that. Netflix had so much content that they could have done that, and they didn't. So, to that degree, yeah, they're not the first. Warner Brothers has been doing it better for a few years now, at least, if not longer. But there's still bigger companies, or bigger streaming platforms that have been around for a while, constantly making these little updates, but not updating some of that kind of
See, like, I would like to know, beyond Disney Plus, are they implementing this type of statement on their products that they keep putting out? Like, for instance, if I were to go to the store and get a Aristocrats DVD, am I going to get that same message, or is it just specific to Disney Plus people because Disney Plus has more? Is it like just catered to that specific group? That way they can say, oh, we covered our bases. But if it's not like a whole implementation thing, then it kind of defeats the purpose, I think.
I feel like I remember some VHSs. Oh no, I'm thinking of Warner Brothers again. Never mind. Like, some VHSs did have a warning, so they did it, and the DVDs would transfer over. But for Disney, I don't remember ever seeing anything. Yeah, it's a lot. Okay, let's talk about something light now. Unless your shout it out is something dark, in which case go on. So our last segment is shout it out. Shout it out is kind of like the Signal sound off, but I didn't want to take it from Brandon. It's a segment in which each person here today can shout something out and they feel the UHCL community needs to know about as far as media is concerned. So, my question is, what is something you have recently watched, listened to, or read that you want to shout it out about? Anyway.
The Crown, season 3, sorry. Well, season 2 and 3, whatever. Watch them all, really. I just started watching the 3rd season. They have the new actors in the main roles. It has been so far really good. I've quite enjoyed it. I was nervous because I really loved the original cast in seasons 1 and 2, and I was like, well, now we're going to get new people, so it's going to be completely different and stuff. But it was actually like a really seamless transition, and makes sense. And yeah, you should guys go watch that.
Is the opening scene where they're talking about the stamp?
Yes.
Okay, I heard that helped. That a lot of people within 15 minutes were like, "Clairvoy who?" Like it didn't even matter because they completely like.
Yeah, no, it's really a seamless transition. Like the first few minutes, like this is weird, like because it's taking place in the same year where season 2 ends and season 3 begins. So it's like that's a big.
Really?
Yeah, it's like the same year. It's completely different, like look in terms of like the actors. But then it's like okay, now I'm like halfway through episode 1. It makes sense, and I get it. It's like it's not even. Like, this actress is not doing anything completely different than this actress did. It's just makes sense. So, yeah.
What about you, Arturo?
I recently started watching something called Black Clover on Hulu. It's an anime. It's just kind of my wheelhouse. But it's about a world where magic is everything, and one of the main characters has no magic at all, like, not even a little. But he doesn't give up and starts training, and then eventually gets what's called like a grimoire. It's like a magic book, but it's like a different type of magic, and it's like even with non-conventional powers, or like the power that he has, like he's still able to kind of get by and still overcome these obstacles.
Is this a show?
Yes.
So do they have all the seasons out?
They have like 40-something episodes on Hulu, but I think it's only because it's like subbed and dubbed. Mm-hmm. So like 40-something. It's like 2 or 3 seasons out.
Okay.
And it's really good. I enjoy it just because it's an underdog story, and I'm a sucker for those. So
sounds very like My Hero Academia.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Very
close.
close.
You started describing. I was like, wait, are you sure you have the right title? So, okay, got it.
Nice. My shout out is Watchmen on HBO. It's incredible. If you've never seen the original Watchmen or read the book, which is really the preferred that's the preferred method of consuming that content, I would say. It's the only graphic novel that made it onto the 100 must-read novels of all time. So what are you doing? Read it. It's a classic. Anyway, the show is incredibly badass. The stories that it tells are both rooted in actual real history that I had no idea existed, and some incredible lore, very deep within the Watchmen universe. I'm not going to spoil anything, but in the latest episode, they have basically kind of retroactively changed the identity of one of the root characters of Watchmen, who had like I think it was 3 or 4 panels that he actually appeared in the original graphic novel. And they completely altered his backstory. Not that there was really that much of one to begin with, but they did it in a way that feels really just incredibly substantial and really groundbreaking, honestly. It's a super badass show, incredibly well written. The cinematography is a masterpiece. Every aspect of it is incredible. It's got Regina King. Go watch it. Thanks.
Like, I don't want to follow up.
I was just thinking, like, should I do a comedy? All these are really serious.
So my shout out is something old. I recently started watching, I guess rewatching, but really watching the Star Trek original series. I grew up watching The Next Generation with my dad. Like, that was like one of the things that we watched together. We had like a million tapes at the house of like all of the episodes. And I recently was like, you know what? I really want to rewatch all of Star Trek, like starting from the beginning. And so I started watching the original series with the actual original pilot, the one that didn't get aired because they didn't think it was good enough. And I'm enjoying watching it so much. Like, I'm only probably 15 episodes in right now, but in my opinion, like, it came out in the late 60s. Like, I really think the ideas behind that show and what actually was produced is like way ahead of its time. Like, I'm watching these episodes and there's no overall story arc, I don't think, at all in the original series, but I don't know because I have never really watched it since I was like really young. And every episode I'm watching, I'm like, man, this would make a great movie, like an individual movie. Like, that's why and if you like that really quirky, like spunky 60s TV vibe with the super dramatic orchestral music in the background. Like, I'm living for every minute of every episode.
That pilot's pretty bad, though.
The pilot's pretty bad, but I really liked it. Like, I just love it. I love the whole show. I think it's not funny, but it's funny because it's the 60s.
It's
and
very campy.
like, yeah,
It's like
super campy. Like,
super campy sci-fi classic.
yeah.
Alright, so I have two, but I'm gonna go just with the newer one. This is a movie I recently watched. My shout out is JoJo's Rabbit. I've tried explaining this so many times, and every time I get crazy looks. So I'm gonna try and change it up. Bookie said I'm approaching it the wrong way.
Wait, approach it the way you usually do.
No.
No, please do.
I'll tell you-
Give
No.
you 2 takes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes, do that.
so take one. It's a coming of age story about a young kid who is buying into propaganda as the world around him is literally crumbling. And that's the way that you might go see the movie. The funny way, or the problematic way, is it's a young Hitler youth that, this is the way I usually pitch it. It's a young Hitler youth that, through several different circumstances, is getting bullied by other Hitler youth. Don't worry, it's not the good guys. Bad guys are fighting each other. And to help him get through it, he talks a lot to his imaginary friend, who is Hitler, also. But fear not, Nazis would not like this movie for several reasons. One, they're being made fun of the whole time. Anyways, Hitler is played by a brown man that's Jewish, so it's great. He is not in the movie as much as I thought he would be, which is, it works though. It works very well, especially if you don't want to see Hitler too much. He's not in the movie a lot. But the director is the same director that did What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, and then he had a hand in the TV show that was adapted from the movie. He also did Thor Ragnarok, so if you're like, if that's one of your favorite Marvel movies, you should see this other movie. It's super stylized. Some people are calling it like Wes Anderson style, but I have never been able to finish a Wes Anderson movie, so I'm not going to say that.
Go see Isle of Dogs. Is that him?
Yeah.
See Isle of Dogs. That's good.
They always like look good from a distance, and then I start watching them, I'm like, I can't do this. But yeah, it came out like a month or two ago. It's fantastic. There's actors that I hate that are in it, but then I was like feeling for them.
I was just about to add, it finally stars Scarlett Johansson in a culturally appropriate role.
Yes. As a blonde German white woman.
Oh
Yes.
no.
I want to take a crack at describing this movie because I've had a hard time describing it too, and
Yeah,
I've had a lot of
people, like,
time to think
laughing.
about it. Well, and it's hard to explain in a way that sounds appealing, right? Because it's like,
Because y'all start
It's-
off with like a young Hitler youth. I'm like, what?
well, I think the way I would describe it is a coming of age story, like you said, where this child is idolizing his father. Ultimately, his father has gone off to fight for the Nazis in World War II. And like you said, his world is absolutely crumbling. The war is being completely lost, so much so that they're beginning to bring in very young children into the war.
Like 10-year-olds.
Yeah. So they definitely lampoon Nazism in a huge way throughout the entire movie. It is literally ceaseless. It is an incredible lampooning in that department. And then Taika Waititi's representation of Hitler, I think it's really good. Like, the way he portrays Hitler as this, like, just dumb oaf who had this like way stupid, crazy, ridiculous idea that he was going to be able to get away with it, I guess. And they do a good job of portraying him as basically just a complete fool throughout the whole movie. And I think they like have some appropriate comedic moments with Hitler. Yeah, particularly the later scene in the movie once he's killed himself and he appears to JoJo for the last time. That one is great.
Yeah. Another thing that I liked is that in a lot of, I mean, this is a comedy. Let's get this straight. But
Yes.
in a lot of movies that depict that part of Europe at that particular time, it's a lot of black and white, and it's like either you were part of the resistance,
Yes.
you were a Nazi, but you see, because it's in a small town, you see of people that are in the military that were drafted, that they don't want to be there.
Yep.
Or people that were so pro all of these crazy radical ideas, but then they were hurt in battle, and then they were seen as someone who was crippled. So then the table was turned on them, like, wait, we were hating on these guys together, now you're hating on me. And you see all of these types of people in this one area, but fundamentally still agree that Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
So
Sam Rockwell's general being like knocked down to 10-year-old Nazi camp training guy was pretty entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it has. I'm gonna say some names of people I don't like, but they're really good in it. It has Sam Rockwell, but I do like him. Alfie Allen, Taika Waititi. I don't know the children's names. They're gonna be famous now. Scarlett Johansson, Rebel Wilson.
She was incredible in it too.
Yeah, it's the first time I've liked her in a movie in a minute.
Yeah, same.
I think if you led with, like, have you seen the new Rebel Wilson movie? More people
No.
would be like, oh,
No.
it's a comedy. No, and this mean, like, in terms of it being a comedy, people would be like, she's a comedy person, that makes more sense. But if you start with, like, so I'm going to tell you about a movie about
problematic stuff,
no, but, like, in general, people think of her, like, as a comedic actress. And so if you start with, like, here's a movie about a young Hitler, it's like, that's a drama. Like, that just, like, the first sentence comes off as a drama, but he's like, hey, by the way, Rebel Wilson is like, oh, it's a comedy.
Well, I think as people start to like learn more about Taika Waititi, because he will be playing another role with the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward with the latest Thor movie. So I think as more people kind of come to know him, I think that
It'll be more clear.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know that he's even like a comedic actor or director or filmmaker in any way.
I mean, he's in all his movies, but people don't know that that's the director, and he's always playing a funny part.
Korg in Thor Ragnarok, the big blue rock monster, that's him. He's also in Endgame.
He also does a lot of movies I've started to notice, kind of like Ari Aster, but Ari Aster does horror. Taika does a lot of movies that are about family.
Yeah.
And that's always interesting, especially with comedy. Well, we've gone over a lot of time. You'll be seeing some version of this. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all the guests, Brandon, Arturo, Jessica, and Miles, for coming on today. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter for live coverage on the campus and community events at the Signal Cast, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at UHCL The Signal for the latest stories affecting your campus and community as well. Also check us out on UHCLthesignal.com. Bye-bye. I don't know.
Bye.
Bye.